So today I'm going to go over how to make a budget from scratch. I know that this process can be a little bit overwhelming for some people, especially if you haven't been budgeting or you're kind of left your budget to the wayside for the past however much time it's been. It can be a little daunting getting back into budgeting. So I hope this video gives you a quick and easy process to get started with budgeting and just make it simple, make it fast, make it, dare I say, fun. But maybe that's just me. So let's get started. Step number one is to get into the right mindset before you start budgeting. So if you've left your budget for a while or you have not budgeted at all, you are going to find that there are going to be some common feelings that will come up, and that is totally normal. These feelings can include shame, panic/anxiety, depression. You can feel like you want to not spend any money at all because you might have overspent way too much for the past couple months. That's totally normal. Make sure that you're gentle with yourself because it can be really easy to beat yourself up during this process. Keep an open mind and an objective mind and have the goal to just see where things are at. You're doing some triaging. You're not going to be judging yourself or shaming yourself for what you've done in the past. It's okay. This is a safe space here within the budget, and we just want to make sure that we are in that right mindset before we start getting going. Don't even look at your financials if you had a stressful day at work or whatever. First, make sure that you are in the right mindset. That way you can look at it with an objective frame of view. The first step to recovery is admitting you have a problem, so it's okay if there is a problem. So just keep the goal that you are just seeing where the spending habits are and just go from there. So now that we have gotten in the right frame of mind, we are going to start collecting data. And the data that we need to collect is what are the spending that is going on and what are the income sources that we have. The more data that you have, the better you're going to be able to make a budget and have a foundation for that budget to be based off of. So you're going to want to collect all of your financial information, and this is going to include both physical and digital. So you might find that your utility bill, say, might come in the form of a mail bill, so you want to collect those. And then you also want to collect any digital forms that you have, so like bank statements that are online, any sort of online transactions or bills, that kind of thing. That's what you're going to collect, and I would store it all in the paper would be in a file folder, and then digital would be just in a folder on your computer. If you're at a complete and total loss and you have no idea where to start and where all your documents are, first figure out where all this money is coming from and where it's going to. So take your bank statements are probably going to be the most common. If you're using a checking account, make sure that you have your login and that you log into your checking account, and online typically you can do this and log in and see all of your list of transactions. You can look at the list of transactions and you can also download your bank statements. Either one will work for the purposes of this process. The goal here is to get an idea of what your income and expenses are. So what exactly are we looking at, what's coming in every month, what's going out every month, and that way we have a base to get started on making a budget. What I recommend is gathering for at least the past 3 months if you can. 3 to 6 months is ideal because you can get an idea of your spending patterns and trends and see kind of where things are fluctuating, because again, like, you know, 1 month might be over, 1 month might be under, and so you can kind of get an idea of what your average spending is on a certain category or what your income is in a certain income source, say. So again, you'll want to gather all of your income source statements, so pay stubs, all of your expenses, say bills, and then also receipts will be very helpful with your variable expenses, especially with stores such as like Target or like big box stores like Walmart, Target, wherever you're going to be doing like a bunch of categories into one transaction. You definitely want to keep those receipts because that way you have an idea of what within that purchase was in certain categories. So like, for instance, if I go to like a grocery store, I have a pretty good idea that that's basically just groceries in the category. But if I go to Target, I could buy like clothing there, groceries, you know, there's a whole mix of items that can end up coming from those. So those are the receipts that are probably the most important to keep. If you haven't been keeping your receipts, totally fine. Don't worry about it. Just try to guess a little bit about where these purchases are coming from and just get a rough estimate of where your income and expenses are going. I do want to mention that this process can take a while. Like, this is gathering documents, and if you pay taxes, you probably know that this is also a time when you're like trying to find all the documents you've like scattered across your life through, you know, a year. So this is probably gonna take a while. You're probably gonna discover things that maybe you've been paying that you had no idea you were paying, and they're just kind of rotating through the months. It's okay if you need to take time for this process. It could take up to a week. If you want to just sit down and hash it all out in one sitting, that's totally fine. But give yourself some time and space to do this. And again, as you're doing this, don't try to beat yourself up doing this. So let's take a look at your income. First, we want to decide if we want to use all of our income in a budget, or if we want to use one of our income sources in a budget. What do we want to do with that? So personally, I use my main source of income as my budget building income. I do this because I want to make sure that my side hustles are used for savings. I mainly just use them for my savings goals, and that way I know that I can live off of my main income if one of my side hustles goes away, or if, you know, something ends up happening, I know that I can trim or, you know, whatever, adjust as needed. Determine what you want to do with yours. Maybe you want to use all of your income sources to make your budget. Maybe you just want to use one of your income sources to make your budget. First, decide what income sources you want to use, and then determine what those sources are and how much money they're bringing in every month. A quick note on sporadic income, and I define sporadic income as anything that is income that's coming in that might not be the same every month, or is going to be drastically different. So obviously, like, your paychecks kind of, you know, vary based on taxes and whatnot. But if you're working in like a sales job, or maybe you're freelancing, you're gonna have income that is going to be quite different every month. So there's a couple of different ways to go about this. The first one is to take an average of, like, say, the past year, or however long you have been freelancing or working in sales or whatever it is. You want to take a look at the average with that technique. So you would be taking the average amount that you're making every month and then using that to build your budget on. You can also take a more conservative approach by using your lowest income that's come through, and then using that to build your budget on. And then that way, you know that if things, you know, become really dry, you can still cover all of your expenses. So you're gonna start to notice that there are gonna be two kinds of expenses that you're gonna be having. The first one is called a fixed expense. The second one is a variable expense. So a fixed expense is basically something that's coming through every month, and it's the same amount. So a good example of this is rent. You know, you sign a 1-year lease or a 6-month lease, and you know that for a period of time, your rent payment is going to be the exact same every month. A variable expense is something that is going to be changing every month. So you could be, you know, spending a lot on it, you could be spending a little on it. A good example of this is groceries. So I don't know like exactly how much money I'm going to be spending on groceries every month. So it's kind of it'll change a little bit based on, you know, what you do end up spending. Another example of that is like gas. Another example of a fixed expense would be like a car payment. Basically anything that you're in a contract for is gonna be more of a fixed expense, and then your variable expenses are gonna be something that's a little bit more free for you to spend on. You also need to determine your sinking fund expenses. And a sinking fund basically means that you're going to be saving up a bunch of money to spend it on something that's going to be coming up that you know about in the future. So there are basically two kinds of sinking funds that you can get started with, and the one is an expense sinking fund and the other is a savings sinking fund. An expense sinking fund is what I basically describe as like a bill or payment that's going to be slightly large. They tend to be a little bit larger because they're usually like yearly subscriptions or car registration fees, something like that. So a sinking fund expense is going to be something that is an expense that's going to be coming around maybe once a year. And so in order to not blow your entire monthly budget on this unexpected expense, you're going to expect the expense and then save up a little bit every month in order to pay for that expense when it comes around. A sinking fund savings goal, I'm going to kind of go over in the savings section of this video, so look out for that in the next couple minutes. So back to our expenses and our sinking fund expenses. So you want to, as you're looking at your expenses, you want to determine what are my expenses that are coming through like once a year. And big ones, again, like car registration might come right off the top of your head, but sometimes you'll have subscriptions like Amazon Prime where you might forget you kind of have that and that it is an expense. So if you can, ideally go back into, you don't need to like super hardcore go into this, but kind of skim your 12 months worth of statements in order to see like kind of what subscriptions or what, you know, services or what is coming through about, you know, once a year kind of thing. There can also be some variable sinking funds such as like a car repair or a car repair savings fund. And that's something where if like you're just basically saving for anything that might come up for your car. So like an oil change might be kind of more of a fixed one, but a car, you know, repair that needs to happen, that might be a little bit more of an emergency kind of sinking fund. Start to take into account what is going to be coming through, like big expenses that are going to be coming through. That way you can get an idea and be a little bit more confident when they do come around that you can pay them. So now that you've gotten all of your expenses and your income listed out, now we are going to do a simple math problem of your income minus your expenses and see what is left over. Once you have this number, you're going to basically see, are you over? Are you under? What does your spending habits look like? This is the part where you can start to roughly categorize your expenses in order to get an idea of what you're spending on, and then you can be able to use that in order to build your percentages for your budget. You'll want to determine a budget kind of allocation of percentages. So one common one that I see is the 50-30-20. And the 50-30-20 is you're spending 50% of your income on your needs, you're spending 30% of your income on your wants, and you're spending 20% of your income, well, not really spending it, but saving it. So that's your savings category. It gets a little bit tricky with the 50-30-20 because sometimes there's categories that are a little bit like the need versus want is a little skewed. Like for example, Mochi is my cat. I have her and I would categorize her as a need, and I need to pay her bills, but also some people would just say, oh, cut her out because she's, you know, a wants and get rid of her. But so it's a little tricky with it, but just keep it in mind that it might be a little bit of a gray area when you're determining a need versus a want. Another thing that can get a little tricky with the 50-30-20 is that it's honestly, if you're living in a high cost of living area, you're gonna see like a rent, like if you calculate how much rent you should be paying based on your income and you're in a high cost of living area, you might get really depressed because you realize that you're paying way over what you should be paying in rent. So just try to keep that with a grain of salt. It's gonna be a little bit different for everyone. If you're in a high cost of living area, that's one that I commonly see where the percentages get a little skewed. So just keep that in mind, but use it as a starting point. You can adjust the percentages as needed for your lifestyle. So now we're going to start on your savings categories. And first I would start with an emergency fund. An emergency fund is basically just kind of what it sounds like. It's extra set of cash that is reserved in order for emergencies that are things that are going to pop up randomly. This isn't for your sinking funds. Your sinking funds, you should have an idea that they're going to come up. That way, so like if it's a really big car, you know, expense, or if it's something that is, you know, just a medical emergency, something like that where you need cash like right now, and so you don't have to go into debt for it, you want to have an emergency fund. Aim for $1,000. You know, a lot of people actually don't have $1,000 saved, so aim for $1,000. You can start there. It's a cushion, it's something. It's $1,000 extra dollars you'll have if you're in an emergency. You can, you know, contribute to that more as you go along, but just aim for that just to get started. So next on your savings categories is going to be your sinking funds, and this is where it's going to be, you know, all of those expenses that you're going to expect, you're going to put that into savings, earn money off of them. Finally, you're going to be using your savings category for any goals you have. So this could be a really long-term goal, like saving up for a down payment on a house. It could be a short-term goal, like buying a camera in the next couple months. Whatever it is, you'll take your biggest amount of money that you want to save, divide it into how much you need to save per year, then per month, and then you'll have that amount in order to start saving. Your income might not be there to save for all of your goals, but at least you can start saving towards some of your goals and start to feel good because you're saving money for something that's in the future and kind of treating yourself. This portion of the video is going to be filmed with Mochi because she is deciding she wants to be in. Now that your budget has been built, you're going to do the most important thing about budgeting, and that's using your budget. So you want to use your budget because if it's just sitting there, it's just not going to be of use to you, and it's just going to be another thing you spend hours on that you just drop to the side. Was I personally reflecting there? Maybe. So a key takeaway that I can have for this is to have your budget printed out on paper and also have it digitally on your computer, on your phone. You can put it as your home screen, whatever it needs to get done in order for you to look at it, do that. I like to have mine printed and on my computer. I tend to just build it into my routine to look at it a lot. As you go through your month, you can see where things are changing, what kind of things are going over or under budget, and then that way you can plan for the next month as well. Another thing that you want to do is make sure that you are tracking your expenses. This is a big thing, especially for variable expenses, to make sure that you're staying within your budget. So you can use a variety of different tools. You can use a financial planner, a notebook, a financial planner, I mean by a financial like planning notebook. You can also utilize like Quicken, or you can use Mint is a free option as well. My buddy here is going to be destroying the backdrop. But you can use pretty much anything that is going to work for you to track your expenses. So whether that's digital or analog, I tend to use a mix of both. I like to use so I use some Quicken, I use a financial planning notebook to track my expenses, just so I have a little bit more control over, you know, it helps to write it down in order to sink into my mind of like what I'm spending my money on. And then I also use a Excel spreadsheet, and that's to track kind of my yearly goals and my yearly expenses as well as sinking funds. I'll use Google Calendar as well for bill reminders. I utilize a lot of automated payments as well. And I do that because I am confident in myself that I know I'm not going over budget, so I know I won't get overdraft fees because I have been doing budgeting for a while now. But if you're just getting started and you're manually paying your bills, it's totally fine while you're getting started. What's cool about this too is that as you're tracking day by day, you'll be done with all your expenses and tracking your expenses. So at the end of the month, you can close out your budget, transfer money to savings, and then be done. And it's super easy. I hope this video helps make budgeting nice and stress-free for you. A little bit of Zen budgeting, if you will. And I hope you can take away some lessons from this and build your own budget. If you have any questions, feel free to comment down below and ask your question. And then you can also suggest any topics that you'd like to see in the future, or any questions or any suggestions, anything like that. I welcome them on the comments. And yeah, thank you for watching. I hope this video helps you out with making your budget. Financials and budgeting doesn't have to be stressful. It can be actually relaxing and quite fun. I actually find some enjoyment in doing my budget now. Yeah, if you would like to see more content like this, please feel free to subscribe to my channel. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it. And yeah, we'll close it out with Mochi's stamp of approval. Mochi, do you approve of this message? I think she does. All right, I will see you guys later. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Oh, she's done.